Most of us suffer unnecessarily because we've got a warped relationship with failure. Even the most shallow look at failure tells us that it's a necessary part of life and that we actually fail our way to success. After all, that's how we learn to walk, drive a car, or touch type. So, while we can acknowledge that it's probably a given that there'll be a certain amount of failure in our lives, we're far from happy about participating in it. Or as Woody Allen once said, "I'm not afraid of dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens." Certainly, we don't start our day by planning and expecting some failure to swamp us before lunch. Yet the insurance companies deal with this reality as a business model. They know that for every 1.5 million car trips today, there'll be 5 smashes on average, 3 of which are going to permanently injure and 1 that's even fatal. Knowing that, they make sure they're collecting more in daily premiums than they'll be spending to fix those cars and those bodies. Yet each one of the people in those car prangs will be surprised, shocked or annoyed because the event wasn't in their view of how the day was going to turn out. Stock traders use a similar strategy based on failure logic. They and professional punters know they can't pick every winner. Forearmed with the knowledge that they may only successfully pick 30% winners and 70% losers, they adjust their trades or their bets so they can come out at the end of the day with pockets full of cash. It's one of those concepts that should be taught in schools, not punting, but rationalising. Instead of being taught to fail our way to success, we're seduced into the idea that any failure is catastrophic and should be avoided at all costs. Our relationship with failure is only traumatic though because we personalise it. Instead of saying, "Well, that failed," we say, "I failed. Therefore, this is proof that I'm no good at this thing. In fact, I am a failure." And then we progress this personalisation onwards to a permanent judgment of ourselves that hits hardest at the self-esteem level. Because I failed, I'm a failure. That's already established in our minds. We then push it into the realms of fantasy by extrapolating it onto, "I'm ashamed of this and I should keep this failure secret because if others find out about it, they'll think less of me. And when they think less of me, they are likely to reject me and that would be unbearable, so I'm not risking it. It would actually be stupid to even try." So with our own self-talk, we convince ourselves that there are 2 kinds of failure. The first is a regular kind where I simply get frustrated with how difficult it is learning the guitar. And I deal with that lack of progress by picking the guitar up less often. That way, I don't feel the frustration so often. Of course, what I'm not noticing is that progress is dramatically slowed by me not picking it up so often, so I'm actually making things worse. The second kind of failure is much more frightening, and that's failing in public. Regardless of the fact that others might be admiring my courage to have a go, I'm personally experiencing being publicly humiliated. Even if it's not happening, I think it is, and my face goes red, my breathing stops, my heart races. I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's unlikely that I'm describing something you haven't felt, but the question arises, what the heck do you do about it? Well, I've got a few ideas, having helped countless numbers of people get through things like speaking in public, bungee jumping, even getting married. The first thing to understand is that logic doesn't help. It's simply a waste of breath to tell yourself not to be afraid. If something is affecting you, you're already afraid, and denying it doesn't change anything. The second concept to take note of is that taking action towards anything means you're inviting failure of some kind or other. They're like the flip sides of the same coin. You can't fail at something without having had a go at it. And let's refer to that in shorthand. Failure means you took some kind of action. The opposite is also true. Taking action invites failure. Most people quickly work out that flipping that coin is a problem, so they refuse to chuck it in the air. And we call it procrastination, and it's the most difficult kind of failure to handle. The reason procrastination hits so hard is that most of us have projects we've delayed for years due to our fears of failing. But we also know deep down that those years have been wasted. I have a client who successfully got through the past 3 years without a cigarette after 40 years of smoking more than a packet a day. And of course, she's devastated by the fact that she found it easy and she could have done it 35 years ago. She's calculated that the procrastination has cost her close to $400,000. The financial cost, by the way, is virtually zero compared to the damage to her health. And I was talking to her recently and she confessed something that you've probably already guessed. She was a failure at quitting. Her breakthrough came on what she reckons was her 24th attempt. And that leads me to concept number 3. Failure works for you because it forces you to find within you what you thought you didn't have. You see, for my client, it was a courage to have yet another go in the face of her husband telling her that she stood no chance and she had a track record to prove that. For you, the willingness to keep on going, to keep risking failure, means you'll discover your inner strength grew muscles overnight. You'll discover energy and tenacity that you never knew that you had. You'll develop your powers of innovation and creativity. What we know beyond any shadow of a doubt is that sitting on your backside won't do any of that. But before you get it in your head to relaunch a project you left for a while, you need to understand this. A string of successes doesn't necessarily deliver confidence. Even if you leapt from one stunning success to another day after day and week after week like you do in your daydreams, it's rare that it results in the kind of confidence that you imagine automatically comes from nailing everything that you touch. You see, our world is full of people who invent, create, change, design, discover, or originate stunning masterpieces from their art or their craft. Yet most of these same people remain crippled by self-doubt. So just to be sure you get it, I'm not suggesting success leads to personal confidence, but here's a fascinating concept to embrace once you're ready. Repeated failure provides the opportunity to understand that we usually find a solution to our dilemma. Being willing to fail your way to success bears long-term fruit that no one can have without it. You eventually come to the realization that you'll handle tomorrow's challenges, whatever they may be, because you handled yesterday's. Crazy as it seems, that creates confidence. So it's time for you to get out there and create some failure.